Hello, and welcome to the Harry Glorikian Show, where we dive into the tech-driven future of healthcare. It's been less than a year since OpenAI opened up ChatGPT to the general public, and less than 6 months since OpenAI introduced GPT-4, the large language model that currently powers ChatGPT. But in that brief time, the new crop of generative AI tools from OpenAI and competitors like Google and Anthropic has already started to transform the way we think about managing information. We're entering an era where machines can generate, organize, and access information with a level of accuracy, speed, and originality that matches or exceeds the ability of humans. That doesn't mean machines are making humans obsolete, not at all. But it does mean that organizations that deal in information need to figure out how to equip their people to use the new generative AI tools effectively. If they don't, they're going to get outperformed by competitors that do that better. And just from what we've seen in the last year, I'm firmly convinced that professionals in drug discovery, drug development, and healthcare don't quite understand the scale of change that's coming. They need to get up to speed right now if they want to incorporate generative AI into their work in a way that's effective and safe. Fortunately, there are plenty of people in the life sciences industry thinking about how to help with that, and one of them is my old friend, Lana. She's the CEO and co-founder of Huma AI, and under her leadership, the company has been working with OpenAI to find ways to adapt large language models for use inside biotech and pharmaceutical companies. GPT-4 and competing models are extremely powerful, but for a bunch of reasons that Lana talked me through, it wouldn't be smart to apply them directly to the kinds of data gathering and data analysis that go into the biopharma world. Huma AI is working on that problem, building on top of GPT-4 to make the model more private, more secure, more reliable, and more transparent so that companies in drug development can really trust it with their data and not get tripped up by issues like the hallucination problem. I think anybody who wants to understand how generative AI could change practices in the drug industry needs to know what Huma AI is up to. But before we dive into my conversation with Lana, a quick request. We want more listeners to find out about the Harry Glorikian Show and enjoy the show as well as maybe learn something. And one of the best ways for a show to get noticed is to have lots of ratings and reviews on the majority of listening apps like Apple Podcasts. So if you like the show and you enjoy the fact that we don't have any commercials or any interruptions, please take a couple of minutes to share your opinion. It will really be a huge help. Just go to the show page in Apple Podcasts and tap the stars to leave a rating or click the link that says write a review. Thanks, and now let's go on to my chat with Lana. Lana, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Old friend, Harry, it's so good to reconnect and get on your show. Very excited.
Yeah, it was funny. I mean, as we were just, talking, it's like, it's a good thing this is such a small world, right? So that you reconnect with those people that you've known for quite some time and you can, celebrate their success. But I want to talk about the company and what's going on and some of the developments. But, for a lot of people that aren't necessarily familiar with, what's going on in the space and what are the really big pain points or market opportunities that I think, Huma AI is trying to address. I mean, I think it's the fact that developing new drugs takes so long, costs so much money, that we're talking and you can correct me, you probably know the numbers better than I do, but an average of 10 years and $2 to $3 billion with a failure rate of 95%. And we only talk about the successes. We never really talk about the failures. But can you talk about in what way does data play a role in that? What is the problem, and how can your approach, your style of generative AI help drug developers cut through their problems and speed up drug development?
Oh, there are so many great questions in there. It's a very great topic. Maybe let me kind of dive into this piece by piece, right? You mentioned the stats. I mean, it's very, very long. It takes like billions of dollars to develop a new drug, and then it's like with a high failure rate, right? And I think sometimes people don't understand why our innovative drugs are so expensive because of all the R&D, right? Like you put in there to it's the odds, right? So everyone, I mean, it's healthcare is 20%, close to 20% of the GDP, right? And life science is a big part of this. So, when sometimes we talk to techies, I think we talk to someone from a big tech company, is like, yeah, healthcare life science is a niche market. I'm like, are you kidding? 20% of the GDP, every dollar, every one of the $5, we spend is on healthcare, right? So
Right.
it is not a niche market. So that's the first thing. And second thing is that, the SAT we mentioned, anything that we can do to either lower the cost or reduce the timeline to bring a new medicine to market is going to impact not only early access, right? So more patients can get on this, particularly, when you talk about cancer. And secondly, is maybe that would be a way to bring down the drug price, right? To make it
Right.
more affordable, more equitable. So there's all kinds of things in there. So if you look at kind of the development cycle, I'm kind of pushing to the choir. You're an expert in this, right? From discovery, right? And then you file animal studies, what have you, you file IND, and then you go to clinical trials, start testing it in patients, right? In human bodies. And then you kind of phase 3 registration study or phase 2, or, a breakthrough drugs and what have you, phase 2, 3, and then you get approval, and then you do kind of commercialization, medical kind of in between, and then post market, right? So there's this very, very kind of long process, and there's a lot of people, even AI companies, lots of AI companies, kind of targeting different points, right? We see a lot of AI companies trying to use very sophisticated molecule models, for example, to speed up that discovery phase, right? And that's a great use case. Is actually for generative AI. That's probably original use cases, if you will, of generative AI before kind of ChatGPT came to the scene, right? But then the problem that we're trying to address at Human AI is the fact that, healthcare, life sciences actually have so much data, right? We don't, we're not short of data, but we can't put those data to good use.
Right.
And why is that? And then there are 3 problems, right? Kind of related directly to this is the lack of data automation. One is that data sets are very complex. And secondly, the useful data are kind of dispersed in disparate systems, right? That don't talk to each other.
Right.
And some companies, these global pharma, have hundreds of different data systems. That's why there's billions spent on like data lakes, right? And things like that to kind of put them in one place. And then lastly, which is a really, really critical hurdle, is 80% of the data is what you call unstructured, right? They're
Right.
documents, and then they are even in free text in the in tabular data, right? So these 3 things make it really, really difficult to kind of automate data analysis, if you will, right? So the industry very much relying on experts like you and I manually looking at the data. Your publication is a great example, right? You put in PubMed, you put in your keywords, and you return, I don't know how many paper, the less the better, because you don't have to manually curate, right?
Right.
So can we use AI to really automate this manual curation, not only from a single data source and also across data sources to create that critical intelligence? So that's what we set out to do at Human AI in 2018. That's when we founded the company. At the time, there were no large language models. It's very much using transformers like BERT models to kind of say, can we do this, not only make it into a conversational front end, right? Ask a question to get answer. And we used to call it just like Google. And I always say, just like how you use ChatGPT. And then at the back end, being able to use NLP to analyze many, many documents or cross data sources. So it's a very natural kind of progression to use the latest large language model. So we started collaborating with OpenAI over a year ago now, because this is already August. Really kind of started accessing those Da Vinci models, and we actually launched deployed a validated generative AI platform for medical affairs to multiple clients in Q4 of last year. So just as OpenAI was launching ChatGPT. So really kind of give you an idea of the timeline, how early we are, right? So it's very much kind of like, it was a lot of hard work because ChatGPT, GPT models by itself is not enough, right? You can't just kind of throw data into ChatGPT, there's no security, but into like, for example, secure environment, large language models, right? You got to kind of have more because there's hallucination problems, there's like lack of citation. In fact, ChatGPT is going to like make up citations for you, right? So how do we kind of what we call OpenAI, human AI starts where ChatGPT ends, right? Take the really amazing power of GPT models or large language models in general, and then take it to the next level in order to be usable for life sciences. That is to make it private, make it secure, right? More importantly, make it accurate, right? And then make it transparent, right? Being able to provide citations. So we're actually one of the few companies on the market who can provide citation to every single generative content out of the generative output out of the analysis.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, basically, you're talking about something that is sort of compliance ready, is being able to show where the information came from.
And it's also the believability, right? And then can I trust AI? It can't be black box, right? It has to be particularly our end users, our scientists at these life sciences companies, right? They are inquisitive. They're also, you got to show me the data is accurate. So that's kind of like a no-brainer, right?
Right. So when you said, you said you launched it, you worked with OpenAI last year, you launched something in Q4, but I remember there was an announcement in February of a new AI platform. Is that the same one we're talking about, or is the one in February a more updated version?
It is more updated, but it is the same platform, right? We launched
Okay.
it in private with clients, right? And then we went public with it in February.
That's okay. I can only see the public. I couldn't see the private.
Yeah, exactly.
So, at a high level, what are the main features and capabilities of the platform? I mean, what kind of data does it search? Is it web based? I mean, what types of output does it give? Who's it designed for? Can you give me sort of the soup to nuts overview of it, and why anybody would be super excited about it?
Okay, what is exciting is the ability to actually surface intelligence, not only from massive amount of unstructured data, right? Publication is a great example, right? To showcase what is the power of generative AI, right? I mentioned you go to the status quo is you go to PubMed, right? You surface relevant papers and you kind of read them one at a time. That's the current status quo, right? So our human AI 1.0 prior to generative AI was that we were able to use NLP to basically surface the sections from each paper and then put it in one place, right? If there are 400 papers in a hotly research area, then you don't have to read 400 papers. You just take one file that has 400 paragraphs, but still 400 paragraphs. So the generative AI does is that it basically takes those kind of the if enriched data, if you will, right? Because large language models is very limited in how much data they can analyze, right? Even though models are trained on billions of parameters, hundreds of billions of parameters in terms of GPT-4. But then there's the tokenization, right? I think it's 8,000 token. You've heard this. So you can't really put in, right? Probably 3, 4, 5 paper, 10 paper max.
I think they're up to 32,000 now, I want to say, on
something like
the larger versions.
Right. But then you still can't, because there are like 34 millions of scientific publications in PubMed alone, right?
Right.
So it's still not sufficient. So this is very much kind of our approach is sum of all pieces, right? We use kind of our existing platform to kind of give you those regions of give you those paper that are relevant, right? Surface and then take those and then to put it into the large language models.
Understood.
And then you can.
So you're doing some sort of sorting up front, or ranking up front, and then feeding those that smaller subset to the system to then generate an answer.
So that is actually, let me take a step back, right? That is kind of an approach. And then the other thing you mentioned is that the use cases, right? That's really your original question. So what are the use cases? The use cases for us spans from clinical trials on the clinical development side to medical affairs. And that is another kind of really common use case for us, to post-market surveillance on particularly publication, literature review heavy, to real world evidence, right? Being able to, traverse like maybe 15 different massive data sets, being able to kind of, look at patient journey and figure out, are my products better than others, right? Are they causing less adverse events? Are they shortening hospital stays? And all these kind of KPIs, if you will. Yep. So that's kind of the low use cases. And then what is important for us is that we created a generative AI platform that is scalable, meaning on the large language model side, we can swap in and out of large language models at will, right? So for example, all through configuration, we currently use OpenAI's models, but then if Google, shout out to Google, give us their models, we can just swap it in and out in just through configuration. And on the back end, the use cases are also through configuration. So we can create a new use case with a new different data set in 3 weeks.
Interesting. So the back end LLM is not the, key factor that's driving this.
You're absolutely right. Wow, you're spot on. We call it the sum of all pieces. It's a critical piece, but it alone, LLMs alone is not going to do the type of analysis that we need for our clients.
So is there a reason you wouldn't train your own transformer from the ground up on this and you would use their pre-trained model?
It's too expensive, right? Too expensive and takes massive amount of time. I mean, we don't confess we can somehow create a model as well from like billions of investment, right? From OpenAI and of course on the Google side. Yeah, that's not our core competency.
Okay. God, I was going to ask you something, and
that's fine. It's so much to talk about.
Went out of my mind. I got so many questions like going through my head at the same time. But okay, now let's talk about starting this company, right? I saw Greg's LinkedIn. I saw your LinkedIn. I think Greg had something like 2015. You have 2018. They were. Walk me through the timeline and how you guys got here, because I know that it's never a straight line. It's always a bumpy road when you're an entrepreneur.
Right. Greg's background, came from Apple, right? And he used to do demos for Steve Jobs, and it was like, and also he was a team leader that kind of built the core engine for Firefox. So very tech, right? It's like tech product development and what have you. So he actually a kind of registered human AI name, but he was doing something different. It was completely different. He's using NLP. The core NLP is the same, but he was using NLP to do prototyping. It's like a Canva or something, right? It was completely unrelated to life sciences. So that's why we said we actually started human AI in 2018, is because that's when we said, let's take the core technology, is actually build a business out of it, right? Start with life sciences, because that's where the pain was. Yes.
Did that poor guy understand what he was getting himself into? He's like, my God, tech is so much simpler than what are you guys doing?
Yes, that's the first complaint, right? But now he's half an expert. And secondly, because I think what he has, which is really valuable, is that he's a learner, right? He continues to learn, right? A completely new domain. I think he knows more about life sciences than some of the life science data science scientists we have. I think it's the thirst to learn, the inquisitive nature. Yeah, but he did complain. He does complain. Life sciences is too slow to adopt.
I'm sure I still have those conversations. Once somebody understands something, they're like, you guys are crazy. Like this is too like, it's funny because even investors, when I talk to them and if they really understand what's going on, I mean, it's almost like they run in the opposite direction. Because it's just, because let's face it, we are not funding businesses. We're funding science experiments.
Yeah,
And science doesn't always do what you want it to do.
exactly. Exactly.
So, so were there any, I don't know, main technology advances that sort of really got you to where you were going? Or was it, because for you guys to even know about what was available from OpenAI before everything really became public, I mean, some of that is just, right place, right time, knowing the right people.
You actually talked about earlier, it's like, timing, right? You could be earlier. A lot of our as entrepreneurs who are doing kind of novel technology innovation tend to be early, right? That's the case. Too late is late follower. That's kind of not really our MO. We're too early, right? So we actually had that problem. It's like, we talk to clients and why, right? It's like, why do you want to do this? So I think we already done, like I said, right? It's a sum of all pieces. We've already, before OpenAI, we've already done lots of really hard work and trying to understand the use cases, having to use NLP to solve those use cases. Really, I want to
Mm-hmm.
say generative AI just gave us a superpower. I want to say that's probably the single kind of value add transformative, I want to say.
And so when you're talking about the, large language models, right? I mean, I want to say that end of 22, beginning of 23 seemed to be that inflection point of, what these models could do before that. And then, basically Sam just jammed more data into this
Yeah.
thing. And then, other things started to appear from these models that you couldn't do in the previous models. And so did that have something to do with the superpower you're talking about?
This really kind of goes to OpenAI's unique approach, right? So we actually, because our early collaboration, we're alpha tester. We've done, like, we saw, three. We actually, working with, like, massive amount of scientific data using like 3.5, and now 4. We saw really, like, dramatic improvement between these models, right? I think what because we haven't had our hands on Google's model, so we don't really know the performance. But then
Right.
from what we heard is the GPT model is still by far the best, at least in people's hands. But then that's the reason. The reason is that they started this, what we call reinforced learning through human feedback loop, very early on. And then now, of course, everyone is using this approach for training their language models, right? There are so many large language models these days. So, but they were the first one to do this. That's why their models are very more accurate than others to begin with.
So I have a question about that, right? So I don't know if you've seen some of the latest stuff coming up, but
I know.
there's a basically a discussion about how OpenAI is getting, I don't want to say dumber, but less accurate, right?
Yeah.
And some of the stuff I've been talking to people about is it could be the reinforcement learning because humans are not as good as the machine is. So it's basically getting worse because of some of the reinforcement learning. And I'm wondering if you guys have run into this issue.
From what I heard, right, because they're like bullseye in the news all the time, is because of the sheer volume, because they have what, over 1 billion users now. I think
Right.
it's just the cost, right? GPU cost and everything is just like really hard to take. What happens, I think, from what I heard, is that they have these smaller models, right, that are kind of domain trained for each domain. So when they take a question, right, sometimes they dumb it down to smaller models to kind of decrease the volume. Right. So that,
Ah,
yes, even if you look at, you signed, I pay for the subscription, right? For Chat GPT. In fact, the
right,
default is a 3.5. You actually have to
right,
click to get to 4. So that's kind of
right,
another way for them to kind of divert traffic, if you will, from the most expensive model.
right, right.
Yeah.
So Greg, your CTO said human AI starts where ChatGPT ends. And I know we've been sort of talking about that in a different way, but what does that really mean? What is that? In what ways does human AI go, say, beyond that ChatGPT? Are there sort of limitations in ChatGPT that prevent it from doing the things that, say, human can do, right? Is it have to do with the training data? Because I know that ends in 2021, or what other issues are there that sort of limit this to allow you to go that next step?
Okay, so maybe I can start with current ChatGPT, right? Even GPT-4, ChatGPT-4. It's trained by tons of public data, right? You mentioned the publications up till what have you, but it is a general model, right? It's not domain specific. So our clients just would not want to kind of just feed their data just into ChatGPT, right? Yeah, because that's kind of a no-brainer. That's the first thing. And second thing is that's first is the privacy and security, right? So therefore they cannot use ChatGPT to analyze their private data, right? So that's the first thing. And second thing is that the hallucination is a big deal, right?
Right.
Yeah, we want close to 100%. The higher the better, right? You got to do at least over 90%, right? This is
Right.
and lastly is this really deficiency, the inability to provide citation, right? Even make up fake citations that don't exist, right? So it's so therefore it's but it's really smart on other things, right? So can we somehow take this really, really powerful tool, right? GPT models, can we somehow retrofit it? That's a word, right? We actually refine and what have you, give it even another layer of superpower, right? Can we use it in the private, our environment now is AWS, right? Can we use them in a private and secure environment to analyze our clients' private data? That's the first question, right? And how do we solve hallucination problem, right? Because we basically, we have the data, we have really make it more domain focused for life sciences, right? Take this well-rounded, powerful stuff. We want to refine it, right? We want to give it superpower for this particular domain, right? So this is where accuracy is really important. And then we have multiple approaches to increase accuracy. So when we say high accuracy, we've actually done is that for every client we engage with using our generative AI platform, they always ask for validation. So what we do a blinded validation, right? It's the human curation, manual curation, which is our status quo, right? And then it's the gold standard, hence, and then with generative AI, and then basically look at this. So that's how we reach to that number. And then lastly, the citation. Basically, that was a must-have for us. So that was actually a really, really hard problem to solve. Even when we were talking with OpenAI, we showed them, they're like, this is really hard to do. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the companies I've been working on in the finance space is sort of been able to do the same thing, which is,
yes,
here's the generative paragraph, but here's the paragraphs we used to come up with that master paragraph. So, and it's a must-have in these spaces. I mean, you can't just say, hey, just came up with it, right? I mean,
right.
I don't think I guess the FDA, if they don't look up the citations, maybe you could slip it through, but otherwise, I think you have to have the backup data. Otherwise, you're never going to get these things through.
Yeah.
So it seems like you guys have this really good relationship with OpenAI. I think you guys actually have a collaboration working with them on complex life science data. If my memory serves me correct, I don't know. I don't even know if what I said is true or not, but I think it's something I remember reading.
Yeah. So we're not actively building use cases with them. No, that's not it's more like, we have access to all their we're alpha testers for all their new stuff, right? There's the handful of companies who are allowed to do this. So very much because they're so busy now.
Right.
It's OpenAI pre-ChatGPT and post-ChatGPT, but we still have a really great working relationship with them. Yeah, we have because that relationship allowed us to build new stuff, right?
Right. No, absolutely. And so now I'm thinking like there was like 5, 6 episodes ago, I talked to the MedPalm people and we were talking about MedPalm too. So it just popped into my head of would you guys be better off plugging into a MedPalm 2 model that already has sort of the guardrails on it that's focused, just in healthcare?
Absolutely, right? If we have access to it. That's why I've been like knocking on doors. Say, if anyone from Google, if you're listening, we have multiple conversations with Google right now. Is it basically saying, can we have access? I think there's I don't know what's behind the doors happening there. I think it's a closed beta, right? So yeah, so
They've let people play with it from what I know. Actually, in what's the date? August 22nd. So in mid-September, I'm actually interviewing Scott Penberthy for an upcoming show. I I would be happy to ask him once I get him on the show.
that's right. Putting some
Um,
good word for us. Yeah. So we strongly believe this is only the first inning of the generative AI game. Is we're really, really early. We also don't
oh,
see OpenAI as the only provider, right? There are going to be so many people working on really, really awesome models, not only from the tech giants, right? And you have open sources like Hugging Face and what have you. You also have Cohere and Anthropic that are really, really working on these models. So we see that, of course, AWS, right, Bedrock and what have you. So there's going to be many really, really great LLMs. That's why we built a system to be able to swap in and out at ease.
yeah. I mean, I try to tell people that are not sort of, my wife asked me the other day, why are you spending so much time like playing with all of these things? I'm like, because it's like electricity. It's actually, I think it's going to be more profound than electricity on how it's going to change things in everybody's life. It's just nobody can wrap their head around like the degree of change that it's going to cause. So I don't even think we're in the first inning.
I,
I
I
mean,
totally agree. Yep.
yeah, 99% of the people I talk to have no idea what I'm talking about unless they've just, fooled around with OpenAI. But so let's talk about, you've mentioned it a number of times, you know, confabulations or hallucinations, whatever word you want to put on it. How do you guys guard against when making sure that the system doesn't, you know, have a fit? I mean, if you've ever seen the jailbreak versions of these, it's actually quite scary what you see going on in the background until the guardrails are put on it, and then it magically comes out with a better answer. How do you know? How do you guys manage that? How do you know that the output is accurate, or say more accurate than a human expert could collate or curate? And then how do you measure the model's accuracy?
And that is such a good question. Many layered again, Harry. So yes, we actually see the models throw a fit like in real time. It's so so how we do this, because we started out as an NLP platform for life sciences, right? So
Right.
accuracy has to be important. So our approach has from day one is an expert in the loop. You probably hear about this human in the loop, expert in the
Mm-hmm.
loop, right? So there has to be every AI output has to be QC'd by our internal life science experts, right? So this is how we kind of put a guardrail to make sure it is correct. So we very much take an iterative approach, right? It's not like you feed your thing and then spit out an answer. That's it. It's very much about this iterative, expert QC, and then put it in for reinforced learning. This is actually a classic case of reinforced learning through human feedback loop. So that's the first thing. We don't label the data. We're never in the label business because we're a small team, right?
Right.
So very much this, can we can we basically loop in expert knowledge there? That's the first thing. And second thing is that we take the human expert in the loop through reinforced learning to another level where on our front end, so we can put in kind of the ability for the end users. These would be folks within life science companies, be able to take those generative output and saying, is this true? Is this not? So there's another level of outside our organization, but at the customer level, being able to kind of solicit or loop in our customer and users expertise to further refine the models. Yeah.
So when they make a change, does it actually have an effect on the model, or does it just let you guys know and then you guys then go back in and make the change? Or is it real time?
It's not real time kind of training. It's basically then we take those in the system automatically captures this, and then we use it to retrain. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So if I'm not mistaken, you also recently contributed to a Forbes article where there was a number of experts, and you guys were asked to write about the current and potential ethical crises in technology. I think you asked, how do we ensure AI is used for good? How do we provide the necessary guardrails of privacy and security? Let's see, how do we minimize deception and more importantly, provide transparency about generative AI? All of these are big issues. So do you think better regulation and guardrails are necessary in life sciences AI specifically? I think about the paper that I saw at MIT and high school students where they were able to sort of design the next pandemic and figure out where to buy the raw materials from. But what are your thoughts on this since you participated in this? Do you think there should be more regulation? We're okay the way we are? Are we waiting for more clarity? What are your thoughts on this?
As a provider in this equation, right, in this ecosystem, so I don't know how much faith I have in terms of external regulation, right, from the government bodies. I mean, you heard Sam Altman is like, regulate me. It's like, right? It's like, but they just can't move fast enough, right? So I really think like, providers, people who are actually in the trenches building solutions like us, like Human AI, it's kind of need to step up, right? Building those responsible AI components, like you mentioned, into their solution, right? AI for good. That's got to be it's got to be kind of our slogan. It's our slogan, right? How do we accelerate bring life-saving medicine to market faster, right? And there are many companies doing kind of similar thing, not just in life sciences, in the like fintech company that you mentioned, right? This is another vertical where generative AI has been applied really kind of thoughtfully because of the regulations. So I think that's like we can contribute. So we've been kind of following that responsible AI since day one, right? Partly also because we're in this vertical that is highly regulated and we're dealing with patient lives. So in fact, just kind of an external validation of why our approach and we're on the right track is that we actually, you've heard of Gartner, right? So we've been letting cat out of the bag because this is a podcast. We're actually on 24 Gartner hype cycles, basically cited as a vendor for generative AI. First is that they really love our scientific approach, right? It's not putting a wrapper on GPT and just take it for a spin. It's very much this layered scientific approach to this. So they love it. But more importantly is the permeation of generative AI in every aspect of the industry and enterprise, right? Going back to what you said, we're not even at first inning yet. It's the economic potential of a generative AI is huge.
Well, it's funny because you mentioned Gartner, and that was going to be actually my next question, which is, when I was looking at the chart of how they map out, all right, generative AI is sort of right at the top of that peak of inflated expectations curve, right? And then, because I think what they're saying is, if I read it correctly, they believe that this field overall is sort of a little overhyped, and it's predicting that expectation for relative business will decline through, what do they call it, the trough of disillusionment,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? And then, so it's not always good to be at the top of the curve before it, they're showing it come down. How do I mean, it ultimately goes up to the plateau of productivity, if I remember the scale correctly, and that takes some time. Um, do you agree with that analysis? I mean, I have my own opinion of that, and I won't share it until you tell me what yours is. But is it fair that Gardner is saying that this is overinflated?
They're twofold for us, right? As a generative AI startup being quoted as a vendor, along with like Microsoft, Google,
Yeah,
right, and Hugging Face is a big deal. Particularly, we
huge.
broke we broke Gartner's record. They've never seen a vendor basically mentioning hype cycle so many times, right? As far as where the hype cycle dot is in terms of the curve, I do agree that it's kind of overheating, right? How many startups that basically I've actually heard stories like our investors like, oh gosh, I met with 10 generative AI companies just today, right? Everyone's kind of trying to like put a wrapper on top of a large language model to do something, right? Because we expect that we can't influence other people, right? We're
Right.
focusing on this vertical, this really really tough vertical to trying to solve tangible problems. I think in the long run, if you look at the Gartner for the generative AI, it actually says, what, like 2 to 5% market penetration, right? We're still at the power is transformative, but we're still kind of at the early stage of this, right? So I think we focus on what we do. I think a lot of the generative AI companies like kind of are gonna flame out, but I think this being able to take the large language models, focus on highly complex vertical, right? Building generative AI solutions that solve tangible problems is gonna basically give us that longevity.
Yeah, and it's funny because I'm not sure that I guess I don't fully appreciate their full data of what's going into this from how they're defining this, right? Because I'm talking to dozens of companies and they are implementing generative AI approaches or other AI approaches for that matter, not to say it's just generative, but really changing how they're doing
Yeah.
customer service, inventory management, all sorts of things that are changing how many employees they need, how fast they can get something done, their profitability, et cetera. I mean, I'm not sure all of that is being baked into the dot or where the dot is. But from the other standpoint, like you're right, I saw 10 generative AI companies. First question, are they really generative AI companies?
Are they really
Right?
AI companies, right? We
I,
used to
I mean,
blind, yeah, it's like maybe less than 10% are true AI companies.
yeah, I mean, are they real AI companies? Two, are they a chatbot? I mean, we've been doing that for a long time. Okay, it's gotten easier and it's gotten better, but if it's just going to spit out what I could have found anyway, it's not really generating from the ground up. I mean, the number of companies that are truly building the scaffolding to truly do this, I think is
Astounding.
the
The
number is a
stuff,
really small.
right? Exactly, and the impact, the potential impact is huge. So I want to make a comment, right? I don't really know how they come up with the hype cycle, right? It's like it's all opaque to us, right? Because it's independent. We just did vendor briefing, and then voila, it came up, right? It's a
Right.
so I think I'm agreeing with you in that hype cycle maybe is kind of misused, right? If you look at this as maturation cycle, then it makes more sense, right?
Yeah, I think the impact of this is going to because I'm like, I participate in a chat group of like 1,000 global CEOs, right? And I'm watching what they're doing, how they're implementing it. A lot of there's a saying, FAFO. I'll use the nice phrase, which is fool around and find out, as opposed to what we usually say. But
Yeah,
um, people are really digging into like, how do I take this and apply it and really streamline something in my company? And I don't think they realize like how impactful uh, this is going to be. Like, if you're not using it, you're toast. I think in the competitive dynamics, from what I can see. Um,
absolutely.
right. So
Absolutely.
I tell people like, it's that age old thing of like, if the doctor using AI is going to outperform the doctor that's not, the lawyer that is going to outperform the, I know it's the same thing. And companies that are using it are going to outperform or be more profitable than the ones that are not. So what does success look like for Huma? You know, do you see a world where every drug discovery and development company subscribe to your platform? I mean, what do you guys envision as um, okay, short of anybody paying billions of dollars for it? Let's assume that is the ultimate success. But how do you define success?
So on the sort of the mission level, right? Our mission has always been, can we accelerate creation of new medicine, right? So any kind of contribution we can make, as you know, right? Even just 30 days earlier is a huge in terms of treating more patients, in terms of upside from the company perspective, right? On the revenue, financial, bottom line perspective. So what we see is this being able to rapidly not only kind of increase adoption for existing use cases on the platform and also creating new use cases. Our hope is to create we call it generative AI operating system, right? Kind of linking these. And we also now started offering APIs to clients, particularly some of these globals that are building their own solutions. Now we
Right.
can be part of their solution, right? And also we can make like IT and data science folks heroes because they can build really amazing stuff on top of this, right? That's kind of our goal because we hope that rising tide raises all boats, right? Because we actually have folks who really like we don't mind our competitors working with you, right? Being able to kind of really help in terms of this bringing new medicine to market faster. And the other thing I want to say is really can we this co-pilot concept, right? It's really AI alone is not gonna you know help us achieve that goal. Is really the co-pilot concept is AI plus experts. I totally agree with you. Like AI is not going to replace you. It's the people who use AI will replace you, right? I think there are fear within these companies, of course, right? Generative AI going to replace me, right? But then if like us, we're in the trenches, right? It's no, it's the starting humans are going to be the starting point and the end point. Even just ChatGPT, right? The better questions you ask, the better answers you get, right? So
Right.
that's a human brain piece. And so if I were experts, I would not be too worried.
Well, it was great having you on the show. I only wish you like incredible success because I'm getting older. So the more good drugs that we have out there, the more that I can benefit from it. So it was great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Harry. It's a great conversation. Very interesting and enlightening.